I eat chocolate chip cookies for lunch, and I smoke cigarettes, too many of them. And I'm sleeping with a 25-year-old carpenter.
Last year, Halifax Building Society gave more mortgages to more people to buy more homes than anybody else. And this year, because we're offering reductions on our mortgage rate for first-time buyers and for those looking for a larger loan, we'll be able to help even more.
Did we get it? Did we get it?
Yeah. So whatever your mortgage needs, find out how we could help you by calling into your local Halifax branch now.
Clever little species, those humans, aren't they?
Oh, man, they make me feel itchy.
Yeah, but they're always developing, evolving new bits. Look at that one. He's even got fingers.
No, he hasn't.
Only the smart species get Cadbury's fingers.
You're about to see somebody caught breaking the law. We know exactly where he is. We know exactly what he's doing. In fact, we know that right now, he's in his living room, watching television without a license. Now we're going to prosecute him, and he'll be looking at a £400 fine. Don't break the law. Get a TV license.
At QuickFit's 20th birthday tire and exhaust sale, new steel radial tires are going from just $14.95 each. So, catch them quick.
Here, Lamb Polly are offering up to £150 each of their summer holidays.
Get away.
After the news at 10:40, Frank Boff advises us on how to be money-wise. Then, at 11:10, it's prisoner cell block H, and Margot is isolated for her own protection and also in the interests of prison harmony. From our studios in Southampton, you're watching TVS. Now, the national and international news from ITN.
Thousands of Kuwaiti hostages freed by Iraq. Tornado pilot Peters' home, British pullout starts this weekend. Judge returns 10 Rochdale children to their families. Running onto the rocks in desperation to flee Albania. And cruelty to animals rises alarmingly. Good evening. Thousands of Kuwaiti prisoners held by Iraq are back home tonight. They were released earlier this evening. They streamed across the border, packed into lorries. They were cheering and waving. They'd been taken by Iraq by retreating Iraqi troops. Some had been there since the invasion 7 months ago. The Red Cross is supervising the transfer. Earlier it said Iraq would also release a group of around 20 missing Western journalists. So far, the Iraqis haven't. It's not known if the group was to have included ITN's reporter Andrew Simmons, cameraman Sam Gracie and producer Michael Gillings. James Forlong at ITN reports.
Out of the darkness of the Basra highway, the first pinpoints of light signalling the convoy's arrival. At its front, a Red Cross vehicle and its American military escort. And then the first of 17 trucks reached the Allied-held base at Safwan. Their occupants, seemingly packed into every available inch of space, cheered and waved as they passed through the lights of waiting television cameras. Truck, its windscreen missing, its passengers leaning over the bonnet to wave to reporters and troops by the roadside. The trucks driven by Iraqi soldiers, the mood of their occupants jubilantly anti-Iraqi. And others who stopped, desperate to tell of the hardships they suffered while being held by the Iraqis.
They treat us very badly. There is no bathrooms. There is no food. And also they give us only one bread. It's very dirty, and we found some insects like fly. inside the bread, and there is no water. The water, they take it from the ground. From the raining. This is the bread, and this is the only one day. And there is almost 5 people in this one bread.
They took me from the shopping. I was shopping with my friend. Okay, and they took me to teen agent, crime teen agent. You know teen agent there in Firdos, a place for teen agent prison. For 3 days we were sleeping on the floor without any blanket, without anything, even water.
No word on the whereabouts of the missing Western journalists.
So have you or the Red Cross any knowledge about the journalists now?
Not now. No.
Any prospect of
them? Well, in any case, I here have none.
Then the convoy was moving again, carrying its passengers back to Kuwait City, but a city which many would now barely recognize as their own.
ITN's Ken Rees is in southern Iraq, and he joins us there. Ken, did the returning refugees give you any idea at all about the conditions in Basra?
Very little information, as you will have seen. The scene was very confused. They were very jubilant. They were much more interested, frankly, in telling us about the terrible conditions that they've been kept under. They'd had very little food and water, were just overjoyed to be home, Trevor.
The next batch of Kuwaitis to come across the border?
So I missed that. Can you say again,
When
please?
are you expecting the next lot of Kuwaitis to come across the border now?
Well, that's the problem, Trevor. I spoke just recently to the Red Cross here. Clearly something went wrong today because they were expecting to get to Basra. They were expecting, it has to be said, to bring back the British and other journalists. This didn't happen. I asked them when they were expecting more people to come across. They said they knew no more details. As to conditions in Basra, just a few minutes ago from here, we saw the trucks and the buses going back up the road towards Basra again. They were being driven, some of them, by members of the Republican Guard. I think that perhaps tells you a little about what the situation may be in Basra.
Ken Rees, thank you very much indeed. Iraqi opposition groups claim today that rebels are still in control of 9 Iraqi towns. That's despite attempts by troops loyal to President Saddam Hussein to drive them out. The Islamic Dawah Party said the rebellion was a rebellion of all factions of the Iraqi people: Arabs, Kurds, Turks, Shiites and Sunnis. Our diplomatic editor, Edward Sturton, is tonight in the Jordanian capital, Amman. Like all other foreign correspondents, he was ordered to leave Baghdad. Ed, what did the Iraqis make of the conditions around them now? What is happening in the country now?
I think people have been very frightened by the sort of thing that's been going on in Basra. A number said to us before we left, we are worried there's going to be a civil war here. That's not so much a pro or anti-Saddam comment. It's more a reflection on the, if you like, the religious sectarian tinge to the events in Basra. The fact that it's a Shiite-led movement. And I think what people are worried about is that if there is instability here, that the friction between Iraq's various communities might break into conflict, that Iraq might really become another Lebanon, if you like.
Were you able to make any judgment at all about the level of dissent in the country?
In Baghdad, it's very different to Basra, I think, partly because the government there is still very much in control. There's no sign of any uprising on the streets, or certainly none that we could judge, although, as you know, we operated under some restrictions. At the level of people talking to you privately, if you could get them to one side, or even of just coming up and whispering to you in the street for 10 or 15 or 20 seconds, that we detected even before the land war began, and that has been growing. But in terms of open demonstrations on the streets of Baghdad, nothing that we could see anyway.
Edward Sturton in Jordan, thank you very much. Julia?
British servicemen and women in the Gulf are starting to come home this weekend. The Prime Minister, Mr Major, told the Commons that medical reservists would be first back. The first RAF Tornado crews would be on their way in a few days, and the 7th Armoured Brigade, the Desert Rats, would begin to leave the Gulf early next week. Flight Lieutenant John Peters, the Tornado pilot captured by the Iraqis and freed on Monday, returned to his squadron and his family this evening.
It was a restrained and dignified welcome for the first hero home from the war. Flight Lieutenant John Peters looked relaxed and confident as he acknowledged the good wishes of his commanding officers. He shaved the beard he'd grown in the 7 weeks as a prisoner of the Iraqis. The terrible bruising the world saw on Iraqi television has faded.
Just a bit. John? John, turn around a second. John, inside. Give us another word, John.
He was clearly simply glad to be home. Then off to be reunited with his family and a joke with a friend.